Did you really think that dress could hide all that fat? Her words sliced through the chatter of the wedding hall. Laughter followed, cruel, echoing, unforgettable. My hands trembled as my drink spilled onto the expensive silk tablecloth, but the laughter was louder than my shame. My daughter-in-law, the woman who had married my only son just hours ago, had just called me a fat pig at her own wedding. Everyone heard it. And everyone pretended they didn't. My name is Naila Ahmed, 52 years old, widowed, and the woman who built the Ahmed Textile Group from a tiny shop into a company worth millions. But that night, at my son's wedding, I wasn't a successful businesswoman. I wasn't a respected entrepreneur. I was just the fat mother-in-law who didn't fit in with the elite crowd. My son, Ayan, had fallen for Sana Malik, daughter of the powerful industrialist Rashid Malik, owner of Malik Holdings, a man who used to look down on me ever since I refused to sell my textile company to him 5 years ago. And now, fate had bound our families together. I remember the first time I met Sana. She walked into our home in Lahore wearing diamonds that probably cost more than my entire car. She had that polished smile, the kind that doesn't quite reach the eyes. "Auntie, your home is so cozy," she said, glancing at the handmade cushions I had proudly sewn myself. Her tone wasn't admiration. It was mockery wrapped in sugar. Ayan, blinded by love, couldn't see it. He looked at her like she hung the stars in the sky. And for his happiness, I swallowed my instincts. I told myself she was just nervous, just spoiled, not cruel. I was wrong. At the wedding, everything sparkled: chandeliers, white roses, champagne glasses clinking, but behind all that glitter, I could feel the invisible walls closing in. The Malik's guests were people who lived off status and gossip. I saw their glances at my traditional embroidered outfit. Their whispers as they compared my simple elegance to Sana's designer gown. I stood at the back, smiling through it all, pretending I belonged. That's when Sana made her toast. "Today," she said, raising her glass, "I've married not just the man of my dreams, but into a family that's, well, unique." Laughter. A pause. Then her eyes found me. "Some of us don't fit into designer dresses, but we sure fit into our roles, don't we, Mama?" The hall went quiet for a heartbeat, and then came the laughter. Ayan's face turned pale. "Sana, that's not funny." But she just giggled and leaned in to whisper loud enough for everyone to hear. "Oh, relax. Your mom knows it's true. She's the cutest little piglet here." That word piglet echoed in my head like a curse. I excused myself before the tears could fall. I went out to the garden behind the hall, the night air cool against my burning cheeks. I could hear music and laughter still drifting from inside. My heart felt heavy, not because of the insult, but because of what it meant. This girl didn't just hate me. She wanted to humiliate me. And my son, he was marrying into a family that would never truly respect him or me. As I stood there, someone cleared their throat behind me. It was Rashid Malik, Sana's father. Tall, perfectly groomed, and smirking like he'd just won a game only he understood. "Mrs. Ahmed," he said, adjusting his cufflinks. "You must forgive my daughter. She's young. But between us, I've always said she needed thicker skin, and maybe you too." I stared at him, my anger simmering beneath the surface. "You raised her well," I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. He chuckled. "Business and class don't always go together, Naila. But don't take it personally. After all, Ahmed Textiles won't be around much longer, will it? My people tell me your investors are pulling out." I froze. "What are you talking about?" "Oh, just business chatter," he said casually. "But if you ever decide to sell, you know who to call." He winked and walked away. That night, as fireworks lit up the sky behind the wedding hall, I stood alone on the lawn, my heart twisting between pain and fury. I didn't know what Rashid Malik was plotting, but I felt it in my bones: something dark was coming. And yet, he didn't know the truth either. Just a week ago, I had finalized a confidential deal. A powerful buyer had agreed to purchase Ahmed Textiles at a price that would make me one of the wealthiest women in the city. And if my instincts were right, the name of that buyer would soon wipe the smirk off Rashid Malik's face. I turned toward the glowing hall, where Sana's laughter floated through the air. "Laugh while you can, my dear," I whispered to myself. "Because when the truth surfaces, you'll choke on every word you said tonight." The morning after the wedding, the house was filled with the faint scent of roses and the echo of footsteps. Ayan and Sana had decided to stay with me for a few weeks before moving into their new home, a gesture I thought was sweet at first. But by day 2, I realized it wasn't kindness. It was control. Sana wasn't adjusting to my home, she was taking it over. Mom, Ayan said, stepping into the kitchen, Sana thinks we should remodel the dining area. You know, something more modern. I looked up from my cup of chai. Remodel? We just renovated 2 years ago. Sana, standing beside him in silk pajamas and heels, chimed in before Ayan could respond. It's not about renovating, Auntie. It's about upgrading. You know, something less old-fashioned. She flashed that fake smile again, the same one she wore at the wedding when she humiliated me. I think the house is fine, I said softly. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, cold and sharp. Of course. I just want to make it comfortable for us. After all, we'll be living here for a while. That for a while turned into indefinitely. By the end of the first week, I started noticing the little things. My antique vases, the ones my late husband had bought on our honeymoon, were replaced with sleek, silver decor. My embroidered cushions disappeared. Even the family photo wall had been replaced by a single, oversized portrait of Ayan and Sana standing in front of a luxury car that didn't even belong to them. I wanted to protest, but Ayan looked happy. Or at least, he pretended to be. He was working late, coming home tired, and spending more time glued to his phone. Sometimes, I'd hear him whispering on the balcony, his tone frustrated. When I asked, he'd smile and say, "Just work stuff, Mom." But something about his smile didn't reach his eyes anymore. One night, as I was closing the windows, I overheard Sana's voice from the living room. "No, I told you, he doesn't suspect a thing. My dad said it'll be handled soon." I froze. Her voice was low, urgent, the kind people use when they're hiding something. Then Ayan walked in, and she immediately switched to laughter. "Oh, hi honey. Just talking to Rita about some furniture options." Ayan nodded, not questioning it. But I noticed how quickly she hung up. Furniture? At 11:30 p.m.? The unease that had been simmering since the wedding turned into a pit in my stomach. A few days later, I received a call from my finance manager, Bilal. "Madam," he said cautiously, "I just wanted to confirm, are you aware that someone's been inquiring about your company's private accounts?" My grip on the phone tightened. "What do you mean?" "2 separate calls this week. They claim to be from your son's office, asking for valuation data. But their numbers don't match your contacts." My heart dropped. "Did they say who they were?" "No names. Just, said they were working with the Maliks." "The Maliks? Of course." I hung up, my pulse racing. Was Rashid Malik behind this? Was Sana feeding him information? I wanted to confront her, but I knew better. You don't fight a snake by screaming at it. You wait until it's within striking distance. That evening, at dinner, I noticed another red flag. Sana had brought out new cutlery, all imported, shiny, and branded. "My dad sent them over," she said casually. "He wants us to have nice things." "Your dad?" I asked. "That was kind of him." She smirked. "Oh," he said, "it's the least he can do since he'll be helping Ayan with business soon." "Isn't that exciting?" Ayan's hand froze mid-air. "Sana," he muttered, his tone uneasy. I glanced between them. "Helping you how?" Ayan cleared his throat. "Nothing, Mom. Just some advice." "He knows people." Sana interjected quickly. "Exactly. My dad's amazing at expanding companies. Maybe he can finally help your little textile business grow." Her words were dipped in honey but carried poison underneath. I didn't reply. I just smiled, a small, knowing smile that made her shift uncomfortably in her seat. Later that night, I went into my office and pulled out the sealed folder, the confidential agreement for the sale of Ahmed Textiles. It was still intact, untouched. The buyer's name was hidden under strict non-disclosure until the final signing, but the deal was secure. Still, doubt crept in. If Rashid Malik was snooping around my accounts, he was desperate. He had wanted my company for years, and now that I was selling it to someone else, it must have burned him alive. But the question haunted me. How did he know? Only 3 people were aware of the sale: myself, my lawyer, and my son. And Ayan was married to Sana. That night, sleep wouldn't come. I lay awake, listening to the faint hum of their laughter from the living room. Sana's voice rang out, confident and clear, "Don't worry, love. Soon everything will be ours." I closed my eyes. My heart pounded. Maybe it was a joke. Maybe it meant nothing. But deep down, I knew. Every smile, every gift, every favor, it was part of something bigger. Something cold, deliberate, and dangerous. And I wasn't imagining it anymore. The call came on a stormy Thursday afternoon, the kind of day that smells like bad news before it even arrives. "Madam Naila," my finance manager Bilal said hesitantly over the phone, "I'm afraid there's been an irregularity." My pen froze mid-signature. "What kind of irregularity?" "It appears someone accessed your corporate account this morning and authorized a transfer of ownership documents. The authorization email came from your son's business account." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "My son's?" "Yes." The system verified his credentials. My fingers went numb. I hung up before he could say another word. The walls around me felt like they were closing in, the framed photos, the trophies, the embroidered curtains. Everything blurred as realization began to claw its way into my chest. No. Not Ian. Not my son. By the time Ian came home that evening, I had already checked the servers myself. The transfer trail was clear. My company's valuation documents had been sent to a third-party broker working under Malik Holdings. I waited for him in the study. The house was silent, except for the rain hammering the windows. "Ian," I said, when he entered, "we need to talk." He smiled, tired but oblivious. "Mom, can we do this later?" "Sanaz." I cut him off. "Did you send company files to your father-in-law's broker?" His face fell. "What? No, of course not. Why would I?" I slammed a folder onto the desk. "Don't lie to me. The transfer came from your account." His lips parted in disbelief. "That's impossible. I didn't." Then his phone buzzed. He glanced down. The name glowing on the screen made my stomach twist. Sana Malik. He hesitated before answering. "Hey babe, yeah, I'm just with mom." "We're." I snatched the phone before he could react and put it on speaker. "Don't tell her anything yet," Sana's voice hissed through the line. "Dad said once it's signed, she can't undo it anyway." The air left my lungs. Ian's eyes widened. "Sana." There was a gasp on the other end, then silence. I stared at my son, the man I had raised, fed, educated, and trusted with everything I owned. "You sold me out," I whispered. "No. Mom, please." But my voice rose, shaking with fury. "You gave them my company. After everything I built with your father, after everything we sacrificed, you handed it to the very man who called me cheap." Tears filled his eyes. "I didn't know. I swear." Sana said her dad wanted to invest, not steal. I laughed bitterly. "Invest? Rashid Malik doesn't invest, he consumes. He's been trying to buy me out for years. And now, thanks to your stupidity, he's about to succeed." Ian buried his face in his hands. "Mom, I just wanted to prove I could help. Sana said you didn't trust me with the business." "She was right," I snapped. "And now I know why." That night, I locked myself in my room, shaking with rage and disbelief. How could I have missed the signs? The secret calls. The sudden luxury gifts. The advice from her father. It had all been part of their plan. They didn't just want to humiliate me at that wedding, they wanted to destroy me completely. I sat by the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. My thoughts spiraled from heartbreak to fury, from betrayal to resolve. Somewhere inside that storm of emotion, a single truth crystallized. They underestimated me. The next morning, I received official confirmation the partial ownership transfer had been logged. It wasn't complete yet. Malik Holdings needed my final signature to seal the deal. They had the bait ready. I was supposed to attend a business dinner that evening with Rashid and Ian to finalize the merger. But I knew what it really was, a trap to make me sign away my legacy. Fine. If they wanted a performance, I would give them one they'd never forget. At the dinner, Rashid Malik was all smiles. The restaurant was dripping with luxury marble floors, crystal chandeliers, waiters in black gloves. "Naila," he greeted warmly, kissing the air beside my cheek. "You look radiant." "I trust Ian explained everything." I smiled thinly. "He tried. He gestured toward the papers on the table. It's all standard procedure. Just formalities, really. Once you sign, we'll handle the rest. The Malik Ahmed merger will be the talk of the industry. His words dripped with arrogance. Sana sat beside him, her hand resting on Ayan's. She looked like a queen surveying her conquered kingdom. I took a deep breath, scanning the documents. Interesting, I said softly. But there's one clause missing: the name of the buyer. Rashid smirked. Ah, confidentiality. But let's just say, you're in good hands. I met his eyes. I'm sure I am. I picked up the pen and paused. Then I looked at Ayan. Son, are you sure this is what you want? He hesitated, guilt flickering in his gaze. Mom, it's what's best for everyone. That was all I needed to hear. I smiled, signed the page and slid the folder back toward Rashid. He grinned triumphantly. Excellent. You've made the right choice, Naila. But as his fingers brushed the paper, I leaned closer and whispered, you might want to double-check who really owns your company before you celebrate. His smile faltered. What? I stood, straightened my shawl, and walked out, leaving their confused faces behind. Because what they didn't know was that the deal had already been rewritten. And soon, the Maliks were going to learn that the fat pig they mocked had just outsmarted them all. The night I walked out of that dinner, I didn't go home right away. I drove. Nowhere in particular, just away. Away from the betrayal, the shame, the echo of Sana's mocking laughter, and the look on my son's face as he realized what he'd done. Rain poured down on the windshield, and the world outside blurred into streaks of gold and grey. I pulled over by the old textile factory, the one I'd built with my husband, brick by brick, when we had nothing but a dream and a borrowed loan. The building looked lifeless now, its windows dark. But to me, it was sacred ground, the heart of everything I had ever fought for. I sat there for a long time, hands trembling on the steering wheel, and asked myself the question every betrayed soul eventually faces. Was I really going to let them win? I remembered that wedding night, how Sana had stood under the chandeliers, calling me a fat pig as people laughed. Back then, I stayed silent. Because I thought silence was strength. But now I knew better. Silence wasn't strength. It was surrender. And I was done surrendering. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror, puffy-eyed, exhausted, but alive. My reflection stared back at me, a woman who had been humiliated, betrayed, and underestimated. But beneath the pain, I saw something I hadn't seen in a long time. Fire. I poured myself a cup of chai, sat at my desk, and opened the deal folder. The one the Maliks thought they had tricked me into signing. I smiled. They never realized that the contract I signed wasn't their version, it was mine. You see, before the dinner, I had already contacted my lawyer, Mr. Imran Siddiqui, and instructed him to swap the documents. The Maliks had believed they were acquiring my company, but in reality, the paperwork had authorized a full sale to an anonymous buyer who wasn't them. And that buyer? He was about to become their biggest nightmare. Still, I wasn't ready to gloat. Not yet. The real revenge, I decided, wouldn't come from money. It would come from exposure. If Rashid Malik had the audacity to use my son, to turn family into leverage, then he deserved to lose everything he had built on deceit. I called Mr. Siddiqui that morning. Has the buyer signed? I asked. Yes, he said. Yesterday evening, while you were at the dinner. The transaction is finalized. Payment has been wired. I took a deep breath. And confidentiality? Still in place. No one but you and the buyer know the deal's true nature. Good, I said. Let's keep it that way for now. Because I had a plan. And this time, I would play it smart. For the next few weeks, I disappeared from the Malik family's radar. Sana called Ayan repeatedly, complaining that I was acting distant and ruining family unity. But I stayed silent. Instead, I worked. I started clearing the remaining staff files from my factory, transferring confidential records to secure storage, and quietly preparing the press documents that would, one day soon, make headlines. During those nights, as I worked under the dim glow of the desk lamp, I thought of my husband. He had always said, never fight a snake by stepping on it, Naila. Let it coil first, then strike where it hurts the most. And that's exactly what I was doing. But there was one thing still breaking me, Ayan. He came to see me one evening, his face tired and guilt-ridden. Mom, please, he said, Sana's worried. She thinks you're angry at her. I laughed softly, the sound hollow. Angry? No, Beta. Anger would mean I still expect decency from her. He winced. I didn't know what she and her father were doing. I swear, I thought they just wanted to help. I looked at him, really looked, and saw the scared boy beneath the man. The boy who had grown up watching me handle every crisis, who believed love meant trust, even when it blinded him. It's not you I hate, Ian, I said quietly. It's the part of you that still thinks they love you. He looked down, tears brimming. Then what do I do now? Wait, I said. The truth has a way of finding its stage. That night, after he left, I stood by the window again, only this time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel broken. Because I realized something powerful. The Maliks had taken everything they could, my dignity, my peace, my son's loyalty, but they hadn't taken me. I was still standing. And I wasn't done yet. The next morning, I received an invitation embossed, gold-lettered for Rashid Malik's corporate gala. The theme? Celebrating expansion, the new era of Malik Holdings. I laughed when I read it. Because I already knew something they didn't. By the time those champagne glasses clinked and the lights dimmed for Rashid's victory speech, he would realize that the expansion he was celebrating didn't belong to him anymore. It belonged to the mysterious millionaire who had just bought his entire empire out from under him. And I would be right there front row to watch it happen. The months after I rewrote the contract felt like walking a chessboard in slow motion. Every move had to be measured, every piece protected. Rashid Malik still thought he'd won. He spent mornings in the paper cutting ribbons for new ventures and nights in the press, smiling for cameras. He was a man drunk on momentum, the perfect prey. Step 1, gather the proof. I started with what I trusted most: facts. Bilal and my in-house IT team ran a full forensic audit on the company servers. They pulled logs, IP traces, email headers, timestamps. The trail that pointed to the unauthorized transfer suddenly sprouted leaves: a proxy server, an offshore broker address, then buried amid metadata an internal memo flagged by an overworked Malik Holdings analyst who'd accidentally CC'd the wrong distribution list. That memo was gold. It named the broker, a shell company, and a point person who'd coordinated the acquisition. I quietly contacted that analyst, a young man named Faraz, and offered something he hadn't expected: protection, a new job in my secure accounting department, and a chance to do the right thing. He swallowed hard and became my inside man. Meanwhile, Mr. Siddiqui worked the legal angles. He subpoenaed the broker, traced the wire trails, and secured bank confirmations. We recorded phone calls, legal in our jurisdiction with one-party consent, one of which captured Sana's voice arranging the timing, and another where a Malik executive joked about making Naila sign before she knows the owner. The audio was chilling. Step 2, expose the lies quietly, legally, and publicly. I didn't want rumors. I wanted a chain of custody. I wanted regulators to have the receipts and the press to have the facts. So we compiled a single, immovable dossier: server logs, memos, bank statements, signed emails, and the recordings. Mr. Siddiqui filed an urgent complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission and arranged for an independent forensic firm to verify our findings. I also reached out to a respected investigative journalist I'd helped years ago. He remembered the favor. He agreed to hold the story until the evidence was airtight. Step 3, set the traps. Rashid loved spectacle. He loved grand speeches and public vindication. So I built the stage where his confidence would be most visible: his annual gala, the very event he was using to celebrate his expansion. I accepted his invitation with a smile and bought a front row seat. But the night wouldn't be about shaming him in private. It would be about timing. I coordinated with the SEC investigators to have a representative on standby at the gala. I arranged for the forensic audit's lead partner to be in the audience. My inside man, Faraz, agreed to wear a recorder and sit in the VIP section. The investigative journalist had a live broadcast slot and a lawyer ready to go on air. I also planned for Ian. I would not sacrifice him. I met him privately and showed him the evidence: the calls, the memos, the email headers. His face crumpled when he heard Sana's voice. He wanted to run to her and demand answers. I told him to stay outwardly calm. Let them think you're broken, I whispered. Let them think you're theirs. We'll undress the lie when the curtain lifts. Sana, oblivious to the web tightening, continued to flaunt her victory. She sent me bafflingly polite messages, thinly veiled taunts, and Rashid, triumphant, announced the Ahmed integration across social media. He even invited local regulators as a goodwill gesture. They declined, busy with schedules. That helped us. The SEC preferred a neutral setting for disclosures anyway. Tension mounted. Every day brought new risks: a leaked memo that could alert Rashid, a phone call to one of my witnesses that went unanswered, Ayan's voice caught between pleading and panic. I slept in short bursts, waking with plans I revised midnight. Revenge requires patience, but it also requires nerves of steel. There were close calls. One afternoon, a Malik associate called Bilal, pretending to be a conciliatory investor wanting to smooth things over. Bilal fed him back innocuous details and then forwarded the call log to Mr. Siddiqui. It was proof they were still scheming. Another night, Sana almost found Faraz's replacement email in my outbox. I deleted the thread with shaking fingers and pretended it was nothing. The villain still felt in control. Rashid posted videos of him lecturing about ethics, his smile steady as marble. He toasted investors on television and pranced on stages, confident that the Ahmed acquisition was a done deal. That arrogance was his weakness, it made him careless. And that carelessness would be the final piece. A week before the gala, the SEC confirmed they'd accepted our preliminary complaint and were prepared to act on probable cause. The forensic partner finalized their report. The journalist scheduled a prime-time segment timed to the gala's opening. On the eve of the event, I sat in my old office, surrounded by the papers and people I trusted most. Ayan touched my hand, silent and trembling. "If this goes wrong," he asked. He didn't finish. "It won't," I said, though my voice bore the truth of a woman who'd been broken and rebuilt. "We made the smart moves. We followed the facts. Tonight they laugh. Tomorrow, they answer for what they stole." Outside, the city glittered, and Rashid Malik polished his trophies. Inside my chest, a drumbeat of resolve sounded like a promise. When the lights dimmed at the gala and Rashid raised his glass, the world still believed he held all the pieces. They didn't know the next move had already been placed. The night of Rashid Malik's grand gala glittered like every dream he ever sold. The ballroom of the Lahore Grand Hotel shimmered with gold chandeliers and the hum of self-importance. Every industrialist, politician, and journalist worth knowing was there, and at the center of it all, Rashid stood with his trademark smirk, the king of counterfeit empires. I entered quietly. Every eye turned. The whispers started immediately. "That's Naila Ahmed. Isn't that the one whose company Malik Holdings bought?" "Yes, the fat pig, the widow, the has-been." That's what they thought. I smiled. Because tonight, every word they'd ever used against me would taste like ash. "Mrs. Ahmed." Rashid greeted, oozing false charm as cameras flashed. "How wonderful you could join us. You look refreshed." "Thank you," I replied smoothly. "I hear we're celebrating your expansion tonight." He chuckled. "Indeed. Tonight we honor the merger that has solidified Malik Holdings as the nation's leading textile conglomerate. None of this would have been possible without our newest acquisition, Ahmed Textiles." Applause filled the hall. I clapped politely. Beside him, Sana sparkled in diamonds and arrogance. Her hand looped through Ayan's arm, as if possession were proof of victory. She leaned close enough for me to hear her whisper. "Try not to cry tonight, Auntie. The cameras are everywhere." I smiled. "Don't worry, dear. I only cry for the living." The lights dimmed. Rashid took the stage, microphone in hand. "My friends," he began, "tonight marks a new dawn. Malik Holdings has officially absorbed Ahmed Textiles, a legacy reimagined under visionary leadership." Laughter. Glasses clinking. Cameras flashing. "Together," he continued, "we've built an empire no one can shake." I leaned forward in my chair, waiting for that perfect pause, the moment when hubris opens its mouth and swallows itself whole. Then it came. The screens behind him flickered to life, displaying his company logo, and then, unexpectedly, a new name faded in. Ahmed International Industries. The audience murmured. Rashid blinked, confused. "That's not." Another slide appeared. This one showed transaction records, signatures, and wire confirmations. His voice faltered. And then a bold line appeared across the screen in shimmering gold letters. "New owner, Mr. Daniel Khan, principal investor, Ahmed International Industries." Gasps filled the room. Daniel Kahn, the reclusive billionaire known for buying out collapsing companies and turning them into global powerhouses, stepped onto the stage, calm and confident. The cameras went wild. "Good evening, Mr. Malik," Daniel said evenly. "It's a pleasure to finally meet the man who unknowingly sold me his company." The crowd erupted. Rashid's face turned chalk white. What are you talking about?" Daniel handed him a folder. "This is the finalized acquisition agreement, signed last month. It includes the purchase of Malik Holdings effective as of today. You see, when you illegally used Ahmed Textiles documents in your merger proposal, you inadvertently transferred your entire corporation to my control." The room fell silent. I rose slowly, the sound of my heels echoing on marble. "Surprise, Rashid," I said softly. "You didn't buy me out. You sold yourself in." Panic rippled through the guests. Reporters surged forward. Sana's jaw dropped. "That's not possible," she shouted. "Dad, tell them it's fake." Daniel held up the notarized papers. "All verified by the Securities Commission." At that moment, uniformed officials entered the ballroom, the same SEC agents I'd arranged to attend quietly. They approached the stage, flashing their badges. "Mr. Rashid Malik," one officer announced, "you're under investigation for corporate fraud, data theft and manipulation of financial documents related to Ahmed Textiles." Cameras exploded in a storm of flashes. Rashid's composure shattered. "This is a mistake," he barked. "This woman, she set me up." I stepped closer. "No, Rashid. You set yourself up the moment you tried to steal from me. I simply returned the favor legally." Sana spun toward Ayan, eyes wide with fury. "You knew about this?" He shook his head. "No, but I should have. My mother warned me who you really were." She turned to me, trembling. "You can't do this to us." I met her gaze, calm, cold, and steady. "You did it to yourself when you called me a fat pig at your wedding. Consider this my RSVP." Reporters swarmed the stage. The story broke live on national television. Within minutes, Malik downfall began trending across Pakistan. I watched as Rashid's empire built on arrogance and deceit crumbled in real time. His investors withdrew. His board resigned. His reputation, once untouchable, turned radioactive. By the time the SEC officers escorted him out, he was no longer a titan of industry. He was a man stripped bare, his empire owned by someone else, a poetic reversal of everything he had tried to do to me. Sana collapsed in tears. Ayan stood beside me, silent, eyes full of regret and awe. "Mom," he whispered, how did you do all this?" I looked up at the screens, where Rashid's face was being replayed across every news network. "I didn't," I said softly. "They did every time they thought I was weak." As I left the ballroom, the cameras followed, flashing like lightning. Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Ahmed, how did you outsmart the Maliks?" But I didn't answer. I just smiled. Because revenge doesn't need applause. It just needs silence. And the sound of your enemy's empire collapsing behind you. The chandeliers glittered like diamonds above the Malik estate ballroom, casting gold across every self-obsessed smile. It was Rashid Malik's pride and joy, his daughter's second wedding reception, the event meant to re-establish their family's fading grandeur. And I, Naila Ahmed, the woman they mocked, humiliated and discarded, had been personally invited. By none other than Rashid himself. "Come, Naila," he had said with that cruel grin. "You might as well see what success looks like one last time." What he didn't know was that tonight, success was already mine. I stepped out of the black Rolls-Royce, my heels sinking slightly into the red carpet that stretched toward the Malik mansion like an artery ready to bleed. My son, Ayan, walked beside me, tall, composed, his suit sharp as glass. "Ready?" he whispered. I smiled. I've waited years for this moment. Inside, chandeliers threw prisms of light across the room, bouncing off champagne glasses and designer gowns. Rashid was in his element, laughing loudly as politicians and businessmen fawned over him. Sana, my former daughter-in-law, the woman who once called me a fat pig in front of hundreds at her wedding, stood beside him in a gold lehenga, her smugness perfectly intact. The same smugness she had the day she destroyed my son's marriage, humiliated me, and walked away with everything Rashid had stolen from us: our business, our dignity, and our peace. But tonight, the show was mine. "Mrs. Ahmed," Rashid greeted, raising his champagne flute, "I must say, you've aged rather well." Didn't expect you'd still have the confidence to show your face here. Oh, I've learned to embrace aging, I replied, my smile razor sharp. It's amazing what survival can do for the complexion. Laughter rippled among the guests, polite, awkward, uncertain. Rashid loved that. He thrived on public dominance, on making others squirm. Enjoy the night, he said. It's the last event before we expand Malik Holdings internationally. Even the press is calling it the business empire of the decade. He was so proud. So blind. Because everything he bragged about, every rupee, every deal was built on the ashes of my company, Ahmed Textiles. The company he'd stolen through forged contracts and manipulated investors. The company that, as of this morning, was legally his no longer. Halfway through the evening, a hush fell over the crowd as the host took the mic. Ladies and gentlemen, before we continue, Mr. Rashid Malik has a special announcement. Rashid strutted to the stage, basking in the attention. Tonight, I'm proud to announce a landmark partnership between Malik Holdings and a global investor, one that will take us beyond borders. Applause thundered. Please welcome our new shareholder, Mr. Daniel Khan. The doors at the far end of the hall opened. And in walked Daniel, confident and composed, the billionaire philanthropist every businessman in the country wanted to meet. Rashid hurried forward, beaming. Daniel. My partner. Daniel shook his hand, then turned to the audience. Thank you, Mr. Malik, but there seems to be some confusion. I'm not your partner. The room went silent. I'm your boss. Gasps. Rashid froze. Excuse me. Daniel held up a thick folder. As of this afternoon, Malik Holdings is under new ownership. I acquired full controlling shares through Ahmed International Industries, a company recently re-established by Mrs. Naila Ahmed. The lights dimmed. Behind them, the massive LED screen switched from Rashid's logo to the new one. Ahmed International, a legacy reborn. The room erupted in shocked whispers. Rashid's face turned red. This is nonsense. I own 80% of. Correction, Daniel interrupted. You did. But when you used falsified documents to steal Ahmed Textiles, you unknowingly transferred critical rights that tied your assets to hers. We simply reclaimed what was ours. A flash of horror crossed Rashid's face. No, no, that can't be true. I stepped forward. Oh, but it is. The crowd parted as I approached the stage. The cameras turned toward me, flashes lighting the air like fireworks. Years ago, I said clearly, you mocked me in front of hundreds. You called me weak, foolish, a fat pig too naive to survive in business. You stole my company, ruined my son's marriage, and laughed as you watched us crawl. I turned toward the audience, my voice steady and calm. But pigs, Mr. Malik, don't crawl. They grow fat on injustice, until the butcher's knife swings back. The audience gasped. Cameras captured every word. Rashid lunged toward me, furious, but Daniel stepped in front of him. Careful, Rashid. The Securities Commission is watching this live broadcast. Any aggression won't help your case. Suddenly, men in dark suits entered the room, officers from the Federal Investigation Agency. Mr. Rashid Malik, one officer announced, you are under arrest for corporate fraud, document forgery, and tax evasion. The ballroom exploded in chaos. Guests scrambled, reporters shouted questions, and the once mighty tycoon stumbled as his empire collapsed around him. Sana's glittering bangles trembled as she reached for her father. Daddy, do something. He turned toward her, eyes empty. It's gone. Everything's gone. I met Sana's gaze. You took my son's love, my family's name, and mocked my body as if it defined my worth. But it turns out, your father's worth could be bought, and I paid in full. She stared at me, speechless. And as Rashid was escorted out in handcuffs, the last thing he saw was the banner behind the stage. Ahmed International, the Phoenix rises. As the crowd dispersed, Daniel turned to me. You could have stopped at taking the company. But you wanted justice. I nodded. No, I wanted balance. He smiled. Well, you got it. The cameras caught my final glance toward the exit, the same doorway I'd once been thrown out of in shame. But tonight, I walked through it in silence. No tears. No apologies. Just the quiet satisfaction of poetic retribution. Because the ones who called me a fat pig ended up choking on their own greed. It's strange how silence feels after years of humiliation. Not empty but peaceful. Like standing in the ruins of a storm and realizing the thunder was never stronger than you. 3 months had passed since the night Rashid Malik's empire fell apart. His mansions were seized. His accounts frozen. His name once printed on every magazine now whispered with disgust on evening news panels. He was facing multiple charges, and every day, new victims came forward, employees he'd underpaid, investors he'd deceived, families he'd ruined. But perhaps the cruelest punishment wasn't legal. It was irrelevance. For a man who fed on power and pride, being forgotten was the sharpest blade. As for Sana, the woman who once stood at her wedding, microphone in hand, calling me a fat pig before hundreds, she disappeared from the social world that once adored her. Her diamond ring was gone, her designer clothes sold quietly online, and her friends? They scattered like perfume smoke in the wind. She came to see me once. No makeup. No arrogance. Just a trembling girl wearing the same arrogance-turned-regret expression I'd once seen in her father. I just wanted to say, she began, her voice breaking, I didn't mean it that way. I was angry. I thought you were trying to ruin my happiness. I studied her, the woman who had mocked my weight, my grief, my motherhood. But all I saw now was a reflection of what arrogance does when life takes away the spotlight. You weren't angry, Sana, I said softly. You were cruel. But cruelty has a way of collecting its debts. She looked down, tears falling onto her hands. I lost everything. I took a deep breath. Good. Now you have space to build something real. And I walked away. Not out of vengeance this time but closure. In the months that followed, Ahmed International rose from the ashes like it was always meant to. We rehired the old employees Rashid had fired. We rebuilt the factories he'd stripped for greed. And we created new welfare programs for widowed women and single mothers in textile work, women like me, who knew how it felt to be underestimated and dismissed. Every morning when I stepped into my office, the same one I'd once been forced out of, I'd run my fingers along the polished wood of my desk and whisper, "We made it." My son, Ian, had returned from London to join the company again. He was stronger now, not the broken man who'd watched his wife destroy everything, but a leader with purpose. He looked at me one evening as the sun bled across the city skyline and said, "You could have taken the money and disappeared, Mom. But you didn't. You rebuilt everything." I smiled. Because revenge only wins once, Ian. Legacy wins forever. The press hounded me for weeks. How did you manage to bring down Rashid Malik? Was it planned? Do you forgive them? Forgive? Maybe. Forget? Never. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about erasing the past. It's about walking through it and realizing you no longer flinch. One day, Daniel Khan, the investor who had helped me reclaim my company, called me to a charity gala. The same kind of event where Rashid once flaunted his empire. But this one was different. There were no diamond chandeliers, no gold champagne fountains, no hollow speeches. Just entrepreneurs, widows, and dreamers who had lost everything once, now standing tall again. As I took the stage, I looked out over the audience and felt tears sting my eyes. For years, I was defined by others' cruelty. My worth was measured by their laughter. They called me names, mocked my body, and stole my life's work. But I learned something powerful: when they laugh at you, they're really afraid of what you might become if you stop caring. The room went silent. I could feel their attention, not as pity but respect. People like Rashid believe success comes from stepping on others. But true success comes from surviving what they never could. Applause thundered. In that moment, I wasn't the woman who'd been insulted at a wedding. I was the woman who'd turned insult into empire. Later that night, as I stood outside under the silver wash of moonlight, Daniel approached quietly. "You know," he said, "I've worked with hundreds of powerful people, but very few leave a mark the way you have. You didn't just win, Naila, you transformed." I smiled. I didn't want revenge to destroy me. I wanted it to define me just once, on my terms. He nodded. And it did. Now, months later, when I look in the mirror, I don't see the woman they ridiculed. I see strength carved from survival. I see the reflection of a war won without losing myself. And every time I remember that cruel laugh at the wedding, the words "fat pig" echoing over music and clinking glasses, I just smile. Because the girl who mocked my body now walks through life carrying the weight of her guilt. And I carry an empire built from the pieces she tried to shatter. Goosebump poetic justice line. They laughed at my body, but now, I'm the one who made their world collapse under its own weight. Movie camera to my viewers. Have you ever been mocked, underestimated, or betrayed by the people you once trusted most? What did it teach you about strength and silence? Tell me in the comments below. And if you believe karma always finds its way home, hit that subscribe button because justice is only the beginning. High voltage sign.